When we first moved into the house on Elm Street, it was everything we had ever dreamed of. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone's name, where children played on manicured lawns, and where the hum of daily life was a gentle background to the world around us. Our house, a charming two-story with ivy creeping along the sides, was nestled between two others just like it, identical in structure, differing only in the details of their owners' personal touches. The air smelled of fresh-cut grass, and the breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers from the neighbors' yards. It was picturesque, peaceful, safe, until the day the new neighbors moved in next door. At first, there was nothing remarkable about the move. A few moving trucks parked in the driveway, the sound of boxes being shifted and furniture being arranged inside. We didn't think much of it. New neighbors were a part of life, and our family was busy with our own adjustments. The first few days passed quietly, but then the oddities began. At first, it was small things, subtle enough to be dismissed if you weren't paying attention. The house next door, which had once been filled with the usual sounds of a busy household, was unnervingly silent. We never heard footsteps, doors opening, or voices talking over dinner. The lights never seemed to come on at night, and though there were cars in the driveway, no one was ever seen coming or going. It was a strange kind of quiet, the sort that presses in on you when you're trying to sleep, making you aware of how loud the world usually is. There was an unnatural stillness to it, like the air itself was holding its breath. I tried not to think too much of it. Maybe they were just an unusually quiet family, or perhaps they were reclusive. But as the days turned to weeks, my curiosity grew, and I began to wonder about the house next door, specifically about the people living in it. One evening, my younger brother, Nathan, got the idea to investigate. He had always been the adventurous one, the one who thrived on curiosity and excitement, even if it meant pushing boundaries. I tried to warn him not to let it go, but he was determined. He told me he would sneak over to the house next door and see what was really going on. I didn't think much of it at the time. After all, it was still daylight when he left. I watched him slip through the gate that separated our 2 yards and cross over into the neighbor's property. My heart began to race as the minutes ticked by, each second stretching longer than the last. It was the kind of wait that gnaws at your nerves, making you anxious for no particular reason, until finally, after what felt like hours, Nathan returned. He didn't say a word at first. He was pale, his eyes wide and unfocused, like he had seen something that had shaken him to his core. When he finally spoke, it was in a whisper, his voice trembling. "You have to see it," he said. "You won't believe it." His words didn't make sense at first, but as he explained, a sinking feeling grew in my stomach. Nathan had gone to the house, and when he'd knocked on the door, there had been no answer. He stood there for a moment, listening, waiting for something, anything, to break the silence. He was about to leave when he saw movement through the curtain of a window. At first, he thought it was just the reflection of a shadow, but when he focused, his blood ran cold. A figure stood there, watching him. The man, who seemed to be alone in the house, was standing completely still, his face pressed against the window. But what Nathan noticed, and what sent him running back home in sheer terror, was what he saw, or rather, what he didn't see. The man had no mouth. His face was smooth, with no indication of where a mouth should be, just pale skin, stretched tightly across his features, blank and unnerving. Nathan couldn't tear his eyes away, and as he did, the man inside the house began to turn, slowly, as though it was all happening in slow motion. The movement revealed others behind him hidden in the shadows, their faces equally smooth and featureless. They stood there, unmoving, as if waiting for something. Nathan bolted back to our house, slamming the door behind him. But that night, the silence from next door seemed even heavier, more suffocating. We stayed inside, the unease growing in both of us. But the following day, the oddities escalated. It wasn't just the house next door anymore. The silence had spread to our own home. The air felt thicker, more oppressive. The house creaked at odd hours, as if it were alive, and shadows seemed to linger longer than they should have. I began hearing sounds, footsteps in the hall when I was alone, whispers that faded when I turned around. The tension in the house was unbearable, and still, the house next door remained silent, its presence looming over us like a storm that had yet to break. The urge to confront whatever was happening next door became too much. I had to know what was going on, even if it meant facing something I wasn't ready for. The next night, when the house was dark and the only sound was the distant hum of the street lamps outside, I made my move. I slipped out the back door, through the yard, and toward the house. My heart raced, thudding painfully in my chest as I approached the front door. It was unlocked just as Nathan had found it. I stepped inside, the cool, stale air hitting me like a wave. There was no warmth in the house, no life, just an overwhelming sense of emptiness. I crept through the darkened halls, my footsteps silent on the hardwood floor. As I moved deeper into the house, I began to feel a sense of unease creeping up my spine. The stillness was unbearable. There was something wrong here, something in the air that I couldn't quite place. I found the living room, where the figure Nathan had seen had stood. The man was there again, standing just as Nathan had described, motionless in the dim light. And just like before, there was no mouth, no way for him to speak. But this time, as I stared at him, something more horrifying began to unfold. I saw movement in the shadows behind him, shapes that twisted and turned in the low light. They were the others, the faceless ones, each one standing still, their featureless faces locked in eerie stillness. I froze, my mind racing for any explanation, but none came. I could feel my breath catch in my throat as I took a step back, my body instinctively wanting to run, but my feet wouldn't move. The silence in the house became a physical force, pressing down on me, making it harder to breathe, harder to think. And then, just when I thought I might lose my mind, the figure turned toward me. The others remained still, but I could feel their presence, closing in. And that's when I realized the truth. The man wasn't silent by choice. He had no mouth. None of them did. They were all faceless, their features smooth and devoid of any expression. The silence wasn't just a lack of sound. It was a deliberate, terrifying absence. As I stumbled backward, trying to make my escape, I felt the cold grip of terror sink in. The house was alive with the kind of silence that suffocates you, that eats away at your very soul. I ran, my feet pounding the floor, as I rushed toward the door, and just as I was about to escape, I heard a sound, a whisper, faint at first, like a breath on the wind, but growing louder with each passing second. It was a voice, one that didn't belong to any of the faceless figures, but one that seemed to come from inside my head. It said one word, run. Didn't need to be told twice. I bolted from the house, the door slamming behind me, and I ran all the way home, never once looking back. But the worst part? The silence didn't end when I got home. It followed me. It followed me into my own house, into every room, every corner, until I could feel it pressing in on me from all sides. And even now, As I sit here, writing this, I can hear it. The silence, the soundless, oppressive presence of those faceless ones, waiting, watching, waiting for me to become one of them.